Coming up in Right On. Welcome to this Halloween special for writers. It's also our Right On season finale. This week, the secrets of writing horror for books, film, and TV. Keep watching. Hi, I'm Rob Parnell, the world's foremost writing guru. I hope you're undead and hungry for brain food. Gaining victory over death and dark forces has been an obsession of ours since the beginning of time. That's what Halloween is all about. A night when the dead are close to us, when we sense the dark presence of the other side, and we come face to face with darkness. But horror writers don't just come out once a year. We're writing all year long. Stay tuned for tips on writing horror and dark fantasy for profit. When it comes to the bestseller lists, one particular genre stands tall. It is, of course, the thriller. Wouldn't you want the success of an international best-selling thriller author? Sure you would. Writing the Thriller takes you through the critical basics of writing modern thrillers for publication. From inventing classic heroes and unforgettable villains, through research, plotting story, and creating novel templates, to style, point of view, pacing, in fact everything you need to begin a lucrative career in this exciting arena of commercial storytelling. Writing the Thriller from Rob Parnell, the world's foremost writing guru. Get it now. And now? Writing was invented perhaps 5,000 years ago. And even then, Gilgamesh and Enlil fought monsters in ancient Sumeria. Later, Hercules battled with dark forces. Later still, Beowulf had to kill an evil dragon to save the world. But it's not the threat or the enemy that is the focus of these stories. It is the hero. It is the choices the hero makes. Heroes choose to fight. They choose to confront horror. They choose to live or die. Most horror fiction is about ordinary people facing extraordinary forces. Most of us would run a mile if we were confronted by a demon, but the horror protagonist will stay and fight, and against all the odds, win. But triumph mustn't be accidental. It can't be the work of the cavalry or a god. Shakespeare used ghosts, mythical creatures, and psychological horror in many of his plays, along with bloody battles, brutal murders, and violent suicide. Props in his productions listed things like buckets of blood and animal entrails. Fast forward to France in the 1800s. The theatre Grand Guignol, the on-stage equivalent of the modern slasher movie. Parisians paid to see criminals, mental patients, prostitutes, and street urchins killed and dismembered in ever more brutal ways. And it was really popular. Royalty paid high prices to attend, and the success of the play was judged on how many people fainted during the performance. There are so many writers' resources out there on the net. How do you know which are the good ones? At Writers Resources Reviews, we acquire and evaluate all the new writers' resources and only let you know about the good ones. Go to Writers Resources Reviews now and subscribe to your free newsletter. In the late 1800s, a theatre manager called Bram Stoker invented the ultimate bad guy, a vampire called Count Dracula. Smart, sexy, ruthless, and very dead. In 1861, the 18-year-old Mary Godwin was travelling with the famous poet Percy Bysshe Shelley. They were visiting Lord Byron, you know, mad, bad, and dangerous to know, in his villa on Lake Geneva. The story goes that on a particularly dreary day, they were talking about ghosts and dismembering bodies, like you do, and Mary Shelley came up with the idea of Frankenstein. Writers everywhere can take heart that the original Frankenstein was rejected several times by publishers because it was considered unbelievable. The popularity of the modern horror story can probably be traced back to the publication of Penny Bloods, or Penny Dreadfuls they were sometimes called. These were weekly magazines published in the 1800s in the UK. There were stories about highwaymen, criminals, vampires, and mad monks. The stories were deliberately shocking and aimed at a young audience, with characters like Sweeney Todd, Jack Harkaway, and Sexton Blake. Penny Dreadfuls, of course, with time and censorship, morphed into the more modern comic book stories, which are now hugely influential and profitable for Hollywood. At the beginning of this century, horror became almost respectable with the rise of the greats. Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft, Nathaniel Hawthorne, M.R. James, even H.G. Wells and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. They all thrilled their readers with fantastical, horror-permeated fiction. The publication of Weird Tales in 1923 brought literary horror to the masses, with writers like Lovecraft, Robert Bloch, and Ray Bradbury, Theodore Sturgeon, and many others. Writing romance is about making the world a better place. It's about love, the way love should be. Romance writing is about you and how you see life as a beautiful, breathtaking adventure, full of emotionally charged relationships, of passion and desire and glorious sexual release. And of course, happy endings. Write romance for fun and profit with Rob Parnell, the world's foremost writing guru. Available now at the link on screen. Clive Barker says the modern horror age really began in 1957 with the arrest of Ed Gein, America's first convicted psychopath. Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho is based on Ed Gein and the idea that an over-dominating mother can create a monster. Conversely, Stephen King thinks that modern horror began with a little-known author called Richard Matheson. Matheson preferred a kind of pseudo-scientific approach to the supernatural, where there's realism, but also semi-logical explanations for the extraordinary. Matheson's approach is said to have influenced writers like Ira Levin, William Goldman, and William Peter Blatty, he of The Exorcist. Today, horror still plays a large part in our culture, but it tends to get labelled as something else. Dark fantasy, or supernatural thrillers. These are labels that have been used to describe the fiction of Dean Koontz, Poppy Z. Bright, Anne Rice, Neil Gaiman, Sean Hudson, Jack Ketchum, Graham Masterton, and even Stephen King, despite the fact that these authors are quite happy to be called horror writers. Bizarrely, publishers often say there's not much demand for horror, even though we're completely inundated by TV shows like Buffy, Charmed, Supernatural, Medium, Ghost Whisperer. You can probably think of hundreds more. All of these shows use mythical themes, vampires, witchcraft, psychic ability, and the undead against a backdrop of normal life and people. Even J.K. Rowling uses lots of horror conventions in her fiction. And of course there's Twilight, a classic rewriting of the original Dracula. But what about the future of horror? More shocks? More gore? I don't think so. Horror to me has always been more psychological. It's about the unknown and not necessarily the horrific. I don't think there really are trends in horror writing. The future of horror belongs to writers, not to trends. Good writers tend to become trends, and the writers that survive tend to be the ones that ignore artificial labels and just carry on doing what they're doing. I think all we can do is strive to write the best we can, and perhaps lead by example. If you want to learn more about this wonderful genre, take my masterclass on writing horror with the easy way to write. It's the 21st century, and the rules for writers have changed. Scratch that. There are no rules. Do you have the right stuff? Go to the link on screen right now, and over the next 4 weeks, find out all you need to know to make a living as a writer in the 21st century. Get the right stuff. That's it for this Halloween special. Remember to subscribe to this channel. Also subscribe to easywaytowrite.com for lots of free writing stuff. Join me on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, MySpace and Google+. If you can't find me, just type Rob Parnell into Google and I'll be right there at the top. Until the next season of Write-Ons, stay spooky, have fun and keep writing!